I've been wanting to make a video on free will for a long time. There's a lot of people out there just saying nonsense, like just complete nonsense. And so I don't know. It gets on my nerves. I did that tick again. I hate that. Golly bum. Recording YouTube videos is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I've done some difficult things. I congratulate all the people that could do it well. I guess it just takes a natural talent, but man, you do all kinds of weird stuff. As soon as you turn the microphone on, you start acting stupid. You sound weird. I don't know. I hate it. Anyways, it's a beautiful evening here. It's cooled down. It sounds like there's going to be some thunderstorms coming in. Like I hear thunder off in the distance. We could use the rain. I didn't even water my garden. It's weird because I've never been afraid of wildlife in my entire life. Like, I'm the type of guy that can catch a spider, and that stuff doesn't bother me. I saw a spider on the corner of my bed one night. Like, I reached up and got my phone, and this was a big spider. Okay, this was like the size of a 50-cent piece, and it was just on my bedpost, and it was right beside my phone, and I just kind of smiled and chuckled and turned around and went back to bed. Like, I ain't afraid of a spider. I've never been bitten by a spider, so they really don't scare me. But snakes really don't bother me. I've caught lots and lots of snakes. Never caught a rattlesnake before, but the other night, I don't know if you listen to my other podcast, this could be your first time, but the other night I saw a rattlesnake, and it was in my chicken runner. And so I went ahead and just shot it because I was afraid that this was at nighttime, and I was just afraid that it would be there tomorrow night, and I definitely didn't want to move it. And I had to make the decision right then and there, because if you leave, you'll never see it again. And I didn't even hear this damn thing. Like, that's what drives me nuts, is that I did not think rattlesnake until I saw a rattlesnake. And then it was a surprise. I don't like that. I don't like surprises. Especially rattlesnake. Then I got to reading about rattlesnakes. I got to reading about them, and there's this list on Wikipedia of all the people that have died from getting bit by rattlesnakes in the U.S. And one of them was a guy riding a bicycle. Just gets bit as he's driving, like riding the bicycle. Just rattlesnake bites him. He dies. And I ride my bicycle all the time. And that just, like, I ride my bicycle through my garden, which in my garden I've got a, giant weed section. And I ride my bicycle straight through those weeds. I've got like a little trail, and it's super cool because like it's like you're riding through the jungle, But, and these weeds are like 8 foot high. Anyways, something just flew in my hair. Like a moth or something. This is what sucks about summertime. You open the window, and it, like, a million bugs just come in. It's like, well, I would like to not run the air conditioner 24/7 all the time. It would be nice to have some reprieve on the electrical bill. Lord. And it's nice outside. It's like 70-something degrees, but if I close that window, if you don't have any kind of draft or anything, it gets hot. Anyways, let's go back to free will. We're 4 minutes in, and I've not even talked about free will yet. I'm sorry. Let's start. I don't even know what's on the next slide. Okay, these are just definitions of free will. I think this is a pretty good place to start. Free will, the power of acting without constraint of necessity or fate. The ability to act at one's own will. Voluntary choice or decision. Made or done freely or of one's own accord. Voluntary. Of or relating to the metaphysical doctrine of the freedom of the free will controversy. What the hell is that? That is the worst definition. I put will. I looked up will. Got the definition of just will. And that's basically the same thing as free will. Firm desire or determination. The desire or choice, especially in someone's power. Like, it's hard to determine what is the difference between will and free will. I don't think there is a difference, me personally. Free will, I guess, implies that you have freedom over your will. And you do. We do. But it's not perfect. But you can learn to love someone, so to speak. Like, that's a statement. Learn to love it. And acquired taste. You can do that. That's the way coffee was for me. When I first started drinking coffee, I just poured tons of sugar and creamer and all this other junk in there just so that I could drink it. It wasn't even coffee, but the caffeine was nice. I didn't much like coffee, but now I drink gallons of black coffee without hesitation. Like, it's just my favorite drink ever. And that's an acquired taste, Beer is an acquired taste for some people. I think I tried my first beer when I was like 9 years old. We went on a vacation to Florida. And while we were in the hotel, like, we walked in the hotel, and it was a nice, kind of a nice hotel. We were all kind of just checking it out. And I opened the fridge, and there was 3 beers in the fridge, Budweisers. And I was like, I found some beer, and showed everybody. I thought it was funny. My dad and mom didn't drink, but I knew what beer was. And, I watched The Simpsons. There was Budweiser ads. But, anyways, mom said, let's drink them. And she opened up a beer and handed it to me. And she opened one up and then handed one to dad. And we all, like, I let my sister sip on mine. And we drank a beer. Like, I was seriously like 9, 10 years old. Like, I was really young. I don't know why I told that story. What was it about that story? Free will. Why did I tell that story? I don't know. Let's move on. Here's Sam Harris. Let's listen.
And most relevantly for our purposes, all of our conscious experiences, our thoughts, intentions, desires, and the actions and choices that result from them are caused by events of which we are not conscious, and which we did not bring into being. You didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick your genes, therefore. And you didn't pick the environment into which you were born. And yet the totality of these facts determines who you are in each moment and what you do in the next. And even if you think that you have an immaterial soul that somehow animates this machinery, you didn't pick your soul.
All right, and let's listen to the next clip.
Randomness of any sort would not give people freedom of will. There is no will in randomness.
So this statement, he goes on to say that neither determinism or randomness or combination of the two justifies the feeling most people have that goes by the name free will. I'll be honest with you. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And I don't mean to be like that. Like, that's probably the way I should rephrase that. This does not make sense. Why would determinism, randomness, or combination of the two have anything to do with free will? It's like saying neither garbage cans nor mailboxes or any combination of the two justifies the feeling of free will. Like, it literally does not make sense. Determinism is the opposite of free will. Randomness is kind of the opposite of free will. So I don't know where he's coming from here. This is not the definition of free will, is the ability to make choices. Oh, there's some thunder. Right as I was changing the slides to academia is not credible. And this is true. especially modern academia. And don't get me wrong, humans there's lots of good researchers out there. There's lots of good scientists. We've obviously done really well for ourselves. I don't want to knock the progress that humans have made. However, academia is not credible these days. Like, it is, especially when you're talking about something like this. There's a couple of studies that I don't know. I can't speak for Sam or Pinkerton or Pinker or any of these other Dennett, like all of these people that pretend that free will and consciousness are illusions. These sorts of things, when academia goes off on it, these are nonsensical arguments. They are people just attempting to make arguments, and so they pick something kind of mysterious. There's one study that was done where they performed these tests on people to see when the choice was made. And they determined that the choice was made actually 300 milliseconds before the human was even aware of it. Now, I don't know how these studies were performed. I've not looked into it, honestly. I've ran into this a few times in reading and on podcasts, and I'm just not interested in something like that, because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It does not matter when the choice was made or when you become conscious of the choice, because there's still a choice. You're still making a choice. Now, how much freedom of will that you have is debatable, but these sorts of things where academia goes off on, like dark matter, dark energy, even the standard model. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the standard model and quantum mechanics, because honestly, it's better than it sounds. It has a naming convention problem. That's for sure. The standard model is a complete disaster when it comes to the names and just the language of the field. However, it's not as bad of a field as other things. Like, the standard model works. It's more credible than other things, but it does have that. It makes your spidey senses go off when they start talking about leptons and gluons and but definitely almost any area where academia struggles to explain themselves, they're just full of shit. And a lot of this is because this is what humans do. Humans are full of shit. I could put humans are not credible. And this is true, especially when they're talking about something that's difficult to explain. And not necessarily, but I'm just saying, if your spidey senses are going off, it's a good idea to just be very skeptical. And especially when they're talking about something like a scientific study that proves free will is not real. It's like, what? That's nonsense. Okay. This is just proof right here. Like, if you just do any kind of research about scientific fraud, you'll be amazed at how awful fraud, and not just fraud, laziness, mistakes, plagiarism, there's all kinds of things. It's basically like a huge portion of scientific articles and studies are just complete nonsense. And look, when I say a huge portion, it's probably something like 30%. I don't know. It's hard to put a number on something like that. But every one of these arenas. Now, look, rocket science is different than neuroscience. Hey, and even neuroscience is a pretty good field. Don't get me wrong, that's a good solid field. But it's a little easier to fake some shit in neuroscience. It's a lot like the social sciences. Like, all the social sciences are plagued with this stuff because they can get a bunch of college students into their classroom, and they can get them to do these tests, and they can write articles on it. And then they can, like, if it just didn't work out well, then they can just fudge the tests, and students have no idea because they're graduated now. And they can publish whatever they want, and no one questions them. Like, peer review is just this. It's kind of a joke process. It's starting to rain. That thunderstorm's here. It's kind of interesting. Alright, so I don't really know why. This is not really relevant to free will. I'm just saying that there's this special flavor of bullshit that academia puts out. And, like, all of the stuff surrounding free will, it stinks of that same flavor. You can say that consciousness is an illusion. You can also say pain is an illusion, suffering, love, desire, trust, skepticism, academia, authority. Everything is an illusion. This is what they do. But these are not, illusion is not a synonym for all nouns, okay? Or all phenomenon. Illusion is actually a real word. It has its own meaning. And none of these things, consciousness, free will, pain, suffering, none of those things are illusions. These are things that conscious entities experience. Like, this is what we are doing. I'm going to pause for a little bit and let that rain die down. It's starting to rain kind of hard, loud, and I need to close that window. Acquired taste. That's why I told that story. I remembered that while I was shutting the window. Yeah, I told that story about me drinking that beer because beer's an acquired taste. I hated it when I was young. It's awful. But of course, I would not drink a Budweiser if somebody handed it to me today. I mean, I'm not pretentious. I would. If we were at the lake and somebody tossed me a Budweiser, I'd definitely drink it. But I don't want a Budweiser. I mean, some beer is better than others, but beer is an acquired taste, just like coffee. And it's not an illusion. Tasting things is not an illusion. Preference is not an illusion. Preference is a real thing. Okay? Now, I think Sam's argument is that all the things that caused me to have a preference were out of my control, but that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. Free will is the ability to make informed decisions. We would not have meaningful conversations without free will. Okay, free will is the difference between a vegetable and a human, or a vegetable human and a regular human. Free will is, it's the capacity to make informed decisions. If you're inebriated, if you have had 75 Budweisers in the last 3 hours, your will is not quite as strong as it was before you had all of those alcohols. Those alcohols will ruin you, and you will not be able to talk straight, or think straight, or make right decisions. And, you still have some free will, though. We would not be able to talk if we didn't have free will. Now, that doesn't mean that free will I mean, I guess we could talk. It's you can put two AI chatbots together and they can talk to each other for an eternity, I suppose. They don't have free will. But free will is self-evident. It's kind of annoying to even have to make this argument. Intuition is a truth-seeking mechanism. I put this in there because I think Sam is talking about intuition. And that, like, he thinks, I don't know. It does not make sense that you would claim that you don't have a choice in your free will, because that's irrelevant. Just because I like chocolate ice cream, if I order chocolate, if I go to an ice cream shop and they say, what kind of ice cream do you want? And I say, I want chocolate ice cream. Of course, all of the things leading up to that moment, I had no control over. But I did have some control over some things. It's not really true to say I had no control over. I mean, sure, I had no control over my parents or where I was born. And, you know, a lot of times you don't even have control over what job you take. But we still make intuitive decisions and free will decisions, okay? And we make irrational decisions. But these are still things that we do. It's the difference between us and someone in a mental hospital. You know, that person, like the crazy person, they still have some capacity to have free will, depending on the subject. But there are many people that don't have as much free will as others. And free will is literally like the ability to control your own will, to carve out your own destiny. So, long-term projects, weight loss, growing a garden, building a house, having a career. All of these things that you do on a long-term scale, and you shape your own reality through the small decisions and the goals that you set. That's free will. That's what people are talking about when they're talking about free will. And Sam Harris is saying that that's an illusion, or that we have no control over the things from our past. Yeah, but we have some control. That's the idea, is that we have some control. We have more control than, a bodiless head in a vat. A bodiless head that's alive in a vat that can talk, and you stick that thing in a closet. You know, it's still alive. It still has free will, but we have more free will than that thing. That thing is very limited. And humans are also limited. We're limited by a number of factors. We're limited by cognitive abilities, IQ. We're limited by knowledge. We're limited by our experiences in our lifetimes. There's all these things that limit us in our free will and our decision making. Sure. But that doesn't mean that free will is non-existent. Because free will is the ability to ignore intuition, knowledge, data, experts, morality, religion, ethics, laws, biological impulses, social pressures, rationality. We can ignore all of these things for whatever reason. You can choose to not ignore those things. You can choose to follow your biological impulses and eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can choose to do that. That's free will. It's fine. It's fine. It's what life is. It's literally what life is about. doing stuff. Sam Harris would like you to believe that doing stuff is an illusion. We're all just atoms bouncing around in causal relationships. Free will is limited. That is my biggest argument. My number one argument against the idea that I don't look. What? How do you say that? Like it's against. What is it? When the free will doubters, the deniers, the free will deniers, is that free will is limited. There is a difference in free will amongst all things. It's very subjective. Some people have more of it than others. It's a spectrum. Determinism is an illusion. Determinism is this idea that everything in our universe has a causal relationship. And this is true. Okay? Like there is always a cause for things. That does not mean the future is predictable. It is to a certain extent, but predictions are limited. It's because the number of variables are vast and conscious entities are unpredictable. Conscious, like human beings and animals. We are predictable to a certain extent, but not really. Not really. It's predictability is this weird thing because you can say you know human behavior is predictable by how much, like what percent of human behavior is predictable? It's like 0. Sure, you can kind of predict what people will do in situations. You can constrain the experiment so that they are forced to make decision A or decision B, and the subjects, you know, you can do what you can do whatever kind of jolly little scientific experiment you want. But no matter how you set the experiment up, no matter how clever you are, there is always going to be an element of unpredictability within the subjects. The reason for this is because that's what makes living things different than rocks. Rocks behave in a predictable manner. They lay there until erosion or something disturbs them. And then they move in a predictable manner. But even rocks are not very predictable. The point of me saying that is in, you know, like you can kind of predict the rock. But rocks are not perfectly round. The earth is not perfectly round. The ground is not level. So there's all these variables that makes the rock do unpredictable things. When you roll it down a hill, there's no telling what it'll do. So even rocks are unpredictable. However, rocks are more predictable than humans. I mean, you can, like I say, you can have constraints. A human stopped at a traffic light will very likely go through the traffic light once the traffic light turns green. You know, I predicted that. I'm a genius. Humans are predictable. But, you know, there's going to be 1 out of 100 people is just going to not go. They're just going to not go, even though I'm behind them screaming, "Go! Go!" They're just going to sit there. They're going to be putting makeup on or texting on their phone. They're not going to hear my horn blowing. They're not going to hear the beer bottle break against the back of their car. But they will hear my fit. I'm just kidding. Humans are unpredictable. There's no telling what another human may do. This is the biggest part of life. So, determinism is an illusion. That's literally the end of determinism, is consciousness. Conscious experience is the end of determinism. I don't know why physicists like to talk about determinism anymore. It's the dumbest thing ever. There is nothing deterministic in this universe. There never will be. God can't predict the future, okay? The reason God can't predict the future is because the future hasn't happened yet. You can make whatever decision you want to make between now and the future. Human beings lie within the Goldilocks zone of free will. If there's anything that you should take from me tonight, it's this. Humans have more free will than anything conceivable. Okay, why do I say this? Because if we had more power and capabilities, if we had less power and capabilities, we would have less free will, either way. So Sam likes to say that we don't have free will because we don't have power over all of these things. We didn't pick our parents. Just imagine if you were able to pick your parents. Like, that doesn't even make sense. He acts like that's a real choice. We weren't able to pick your parents. Was God able to pick his history? I don't know. No, I don't, like, it doesn't make sense. You don't pick your history, you pick your future. And, you know, as you progress, you will have picked some of your history, which will improve some of your free will. But the more humans progress, and the more any conscious entity progresses, the more aware of certain things you are. The more aware of your own actions. The more aware of suffering throughout the universe. So your responsibilities increase. And that's why that I say that humans are in the Goldilocks zone of free will. It's because animals below us, they have free will. They just don't have as much free will as us. They don't have very much control over their situation at all. They have to eat things and walk around and find a mate and run from predators and get out of the weather. You know, they have to do this at all times. It's like nature is forcing them to do things. Now, they still have will. They still suffer. They still have desires. They don't have as much capacity for desires. They don't, you know, on a hot day, they're not like, boy, I'd love a nice chocolate milkshake. That's not, you know, but they will think I'd love some water. Like, that's a thought. Like, they get thirsty. That's a will. And sure, it's not their fault that it's hot. Doesn't change the fact that they will the water. Now, gods or advanced aliens or artificial superintelligences, just anything with, I hope I don't get struck by lightning. It's funny because I said I was going to close the window, and then I ended up walking around a little bit and making sure my windows were rolled up and stuff like that. And then I just didn't start the podcast back immediately, and I just left the window open. And the storm's starting to pick back up. I got struck by lightning a few years ago, so I'm a little cautious when it's storming like this. It was, that's not a lie. I really did get struck by lightning. You know, I don't know if some people would count it or not, but lightning struck right beside me. Like, I saw the flash of light and I felt electricity. I had a little bitty burn mark on my leg too. And most of the electricity that I felt was in my leg too. Now, it was not Like, I just screamed at the top of my lungs like a little girl while it was happening. But, you know, it wasn't like a big ordeal. Like, I forgot about it. Like, it happened, and I was like, wow, I just got struck by lightning. And then I just totally forgot about it for like a few days. And then I was like, holy shit, I got struck by lightning the other day. I need to tell people about that. Anyways, what were we talking about? The Goldilocks zone of free will. So, advanced aliens, or gods, they, like Sam Harris, like if you're able to think of an entity that does have free will, what would this entity be like? And it would be like humans, or more powerful. And if it's more powerful, as in like the way Sam wants it, where they can just pick where they came from, and they can pick all of the things that help them make decisions. If they have perfect free will, like, I don't even know what that means. They have they would have responsibility and increase. You know, the more powerful you are, the more responsibilities you have. And so it's like your free will decreases. Because now you got all this stuff you got to do. You become like a slave to your own free will. I would expect that most entities, once they reach a certain level of capabilities, they just basically become philanthropists and people that try to eliminate suffering. I would hope this. Now, obviously, this is not true because Hitler was a very capable person, but he was not a good person. So it's like there must be some sort of level of intelligence that I'm not exactly sure what I'm trying to say here. This is, this may be bullshit, honestly, but this was the idea, okay? And I'm arguing it here, and I'm rethinking it, and I'm like, I don't really know if this is true. Yeah, it's certainly true for animals. But would a conscious entity that's more powerful than humans, and like, I hate to use the example of God, but that's a fine example. But does God have ultimate free will like Sam would think? Like, it doesn't. I don't think so. I think that would make you have less free will because you don't have like you're more worried about consequences. You're really trying to stack the deck for your own existence, so to speak. Like, so even if you are like this Hitler type character, this is the point I was trying to get at, I guess. That like you're still a slave to your own free will. Just like jobs, okay? We all have jobs. We don't really want jobs. Like, even people that love their job, it's like, obligations kind of suck. But we voluntarily commit to those obligations for the long-term goal. And the more capable you become, the more long-term goals and the more complicated and the more extravagant and the more desires, all of these things increase. And so you become more and more burdened by your own free will. And so there is this happy medium of maximizing your own free will. And it's has a little bit to do with a little bit of randomness, a little bit of sleaziness, a whole bunch of morals and ethics. A little bit of, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Like you kind of want to just things go with the flow. Just to let things go with the flow, but guide them into a way that maximizes your free will. if that's your goal, like, you know, you can do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. I don't care. But I got one more final note. I mentioned Sam Harris a bunch in this video, and he's the main guy, I think. But they're all dumb. But all you have to do to defeat Sam Harris in an argument is just imagine a universe where Sam Harris is wrong.